All right, well, welcome everybody on the 16th edition of FC Football's The Heart of the Coach. My name is Bryan McKenzie. I have the privilege to serve as the Director of Football for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the Midwest region and beyond. And our guest today is Zach Hanson. He's the offensive line coach at the University of Tulsa. Zach, welcome to the call today.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, great to have you. Great to see you and excited about what the Lord will have on this call, and as we ask you some questions. Well, since you've been not in your normal coach's routine here in the past couple of months, what are some of the things you and Annie have enjoyed doing together that you might not have been able to do if you were in your normal routine?
I think the biggest thing has been just being able to connect with family and friends, and I know that sounds weird because we're quarantined right now, but just FaceTiming with family and my wife and I both work in this business, so it's so hard for us to find time to connect with them, whether it's on a FaceTime call or a phone call or whatever it is. And, my family all lives in California, and so being able to visit with my brother and his wife and kids, and my parents and my grandparents, and same with her family. That's been a big thing for us, and just spending time with each other too. We get to season with her working in Oklahoma and me working here. There's not a whole lot of time where we get to see each other. Sometimes we don't see each other, and so just really taking advantage of every day we get together, and cooking together. That's a big thing that we started doing that we've enjoyed too. But little things like that.
That's great. Remind these guys, and then maybe not remind them, just tell them what your wife does.
Yeah, so my wife she's the assistant athletic director for recruiting at the University of Oklahoma for the football team.
So that's why they both work in the same business in the same household. So you got a little bit of conflict there, but it all works out good. Well, Zach, I know you've been involved as a player and now as a coach in a lot of great football games. So what's one of the greatest football games you were part of, and why was it so great?
Yeah, I think, as a player, I played at Kansas State for Coach Snyder. So as a player, probably the game that stands out in my mind the most is we played Texas A&M my senior year. It was the year before they left for the SEC. And we ended up going into 4 overtimes with them and ended up winning the game. But that one stands out just from the, obviously we were outmatched athletically from Texas and Kansas State. It's a different caliber athlete, or at least it was then. And just the persistence it took. And I've never been around a team that was that driven. And it forced me to be more driven too, and we were all just bought in. Wouldn't be denied. I mean, it was just going back and forth for that game lasted like 6 hours or something like that. So that was one as a player. As a coach, I'd say I have to be last year at Oklahoma when we played Baylor down at Baylor in Waco. I think at one point we were down by 25 points in the first half, and I think we ended the half 34-10, and then we came out and scored 24 unanswered and won 37-34 or something like that. We ended up pulling it off. It was the biggest turnaround in OU history. So obviously same type of thing with that. I mean, our guys didn't give up. Really cool to be a part of that one as a coach though too.
Yeah, I remember watching that one. It was a good one. Really good one.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, here's a question. Why do you coach? What's your why? What's your purpose in coaching?
I think the biggest thing is just to find a way to serve the Lord, man. That's number one, and to serve others, ultimately. And sports has just been a tremendous platform for my wife and I both. In order to do that, it's all about the relationships with the players and coaches, and the relationships that you build in this business are just incredible. Whether it's with high school coaches or college or guys you came up with and GA'd with, your players obviously are huge. You get to see them just continue to grow, and ultimately it's our job to help these young men grow into the best men they can be every single day, and not just on the football field or in the classroom, but mentally and spiritually as well. So that's my main mission.
That's great. Kind of along with that, even more maybe specifics, how do you want your relationship with Jesus to practically impact your players at Tulsa, specifically, obviously, offensive line, because that's what you're coaching?
Yeah, sure. No, obviously that's something we're all striving to do, I think, is find the way to connect the two things, and that's why we were on that call with Coach Horton last week. And that was what I asked him, like, Coach, well, you got any tips for me on how to connect with these guys and kind of bring your relationship with the Lord into what you do with your players. I've known Coach Horton for 10 years, a great guy, unbelievable guy, and somebody I really look up to. So, I think it's just, I hope it has a positive impact on them. Hopeful that when they see and hear how God has impacted my life and my wife's life and they're around us, that they strive to want that in their own life too, and, I think that one of the important things that we try to do at our house is just create an environment where when you walk in the door, you don't have to get hit with the Bible, man. You just know, you can kind of feel that God is present here in this house and that he's a part of our life, and so we try to do that with everybody that we're around, and especially our kids, though. When they come here, I want them to know that this is a place of God, man. This is somewhere that our faith is important to us, and we want it to be important to you too. But just something you just feel.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just make it natural. That's
the
way it should be, so overflowing from your relationship with him. That's great. I know you like to have those guys over to eat. I remember you showing me a picture of some of the stuff you fixed for them, so that helps too.
For sure, man. Bring them into your house as much as you can. Absolutely. I mean, that's something I remember Gus Malzahn saying, the kids aren't always just going to show up, so sometimes you just got to bring them to you. And that one's kind of hung with me too. It's true. If you just let them do their thing, a few of them might come over. But if you say, hey, you guys are coming over once a month, here's the day, show up, and you bring them in and they'll have a great time and you can love them up then.
That's great. Well, Zach, name two of the most influential coaches you've worked with and tell us why they've been so impactful in your life.
Yeah, I've been really blessed so far in my career to be around some really good ones. But, the two that come to mind right away are two that were there from the beginning. I played at Kansas State for Coach Snyder, and I'd say he'd have to be number one. Just from how he was able, to just change my life, and he demanded excellence, was very demanding in that regard, but taught me so much about just work ethic and what that can do for you. I wasn't always the most talented guy, neither was our whole team. But he expected greatness from us, and we expected it from ourselves because of that too. And, he just showed us how successful you can really be if you're doing things the right way and you're willing to put in the work, and he's a great example of that too. Nobody works harder than that guy. And he was 80 years old. I remember seeing him up at the complex at midnight when I thought I was the only guy in the building running off watering reports as a GA, but he'd come cruising down the hall in his suit, and unbelievable. So still a great mentor to me, somebody I talk to all the time, and a very encouraging person. The second one would have to be Charlie Dickey. Charlie was my offensive line coach at Kansas State, and he's currently the offensive line coach at Oklahoma State right down the road here from me. Charlie was and still is a huge part of why I'm in this business. I knew I wanted to coach in college. There was times where I doubted whether or not I really wanted to do it, just because I saw the time that it was going to take away from my family, and that's going to be really important to me. I knew that always would be. And Charlie showed me that you can be a great coach, a great father, a great husband, and a man of God, and you can make it work. It's going to be incredibly hard, but you can make it happen. And so he ultimately was the one that showed me that it was possible. And then, I played for him for 4 years. I GA'd for him and QC'd for him for 4, went back and coached with him for another one, and still talk to him once a week now, so he's a incredible person, a great mentor to me, and his whole family are like my family too.
Yeah, I love it, man. The influence coaches have on us is incredible, and especially those who have gotten the coaching business. We can think about those guys. And of course, it was Billy Graham who said that, one coach will impact more people in a lifetime than, more people in a lifetime than most people do. Or he said it's good. Most coaches will impact more people in 1 year than most people do in a whole lifetime. And we can all find that coach or two coaches that have made that impact in our life. Well,
Sure.
Zach, as a college coach, your schedule's a little different right now, but let's say in the fall, everything's back to normal. You're in your zone. You're getting up early. You're going through your day, super busy. All the responsibilities you have as a Division I head position coach with your offensive lineman and the other things, working with the offensive staff, crazy busy. So what do you do during those super busy times to practically foster your relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's something that I struggle with. I'll be honest with you. I think as coaches, we all struggle with that, and it's just making that a priority. Something I continuously am working on to be better at, and always striving to be better at that. And even when I'm not in season, but what some of the things I do, I read a devotional daily. My wife and I will typically do that together, whether it's at 5 o'clock in the morning or whenever it is. We try to really make that a priority. Pray and pray some more. That's another one. I mean, as much as possible throughout the day, if you get a 5-minute break or whatever, go in your office, close the door, spend a little time, whether it's reading or praying or just trying to get connected back to it. And then, just remembering to thank God for all the great blessings that you have, as well as when things aren't going great, and I think that's something that all of us struggle with. And I know I do. And, just making sure to keep it all, relevant and in at the times where it's good and bad, because he's there and he's going to help you through all of it.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, you're heading in, I think, your 9th year of college coaching here. So you wouldn't be classified as a veteran yet. Getting close. I don't know what that classifies as a veteran, but nine probably doesn't. So what's something a veteran coach, or maybe some things a veteran coach has taught you that's been helpful in your coaching career so far?
I think one thing that really stands out to me would be I was really fortunate. Like I said, man, I've been blessed so many opportunities that I probably don't deserve. But I was able to coach at University of North Carolina for a couple years, and Gene Chiswick was our D coordinator there. And so I was able to study Gene a little bit and see how he operated. And I mean, he was just awesome, just a master at what he did, and which is why he's been so successful. But, one thing I always admired about Gene was his ability to really build that cohesive unit on that defense. He was our D coordinator at the time. And, he just placed such a huge emphasis how each person had such a big part of what that whole unit was doing, and would show, clips and quotes and stuff like that. But he was just able to build those relationships with those players and make that unit just, exceed expectation. And so, that's some stuff that I've carried with me, just making sure my guys understand, especially as an offensive line, we have to be that cohesive unit, but getting them to understand how important each person is, and working together, teamwork and camaraderie, and how you can achieve uncommon things if we're all just together, And it just goes back to so many things that Coach Snyder taught us at Kansas State too. I mean, I could rattle off 1,000 things I've taken from him, and really any coach I've been around, I try to take little pieces from all of them. Because everybody's got different things that are amazing, and just trying to take a little tool here and there and build your own toolbox, But really have a lot of respect for Gene and what he's done. He's been a really good mentor for me as well.
That's great. That's great. What's great about this profession, this fraternity football coaches, so many coaches are willing to share and willing to pass it down to coaches, whether they're with you or not. They're just willing to share that, and that's such an encouragement for young coaches, I know. Well, Zach, what's one of the biggest challenges you faced as a coach, and how did your relationship with the Lord help you navigate through that challenge?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing has just been the roller coaster of the whole thing, as a young coach coming up in this world, having my wife in this business as well. We've spent, several years apart from each other. The first year we were married, we lived together, but then she left for Oklahoma and I was at North Carolina, and we lived apart for that whole year. Then I left and went to Kansas State while she was at OU. And, so there's just a lot of roller coasters, and we're both people that, we're athletic, we're athletes. That's what we are. So we like to have schedules. We like to have lists of this is how everything is. And if you work hard enough, it's going to happen. And there's just can't do that in this profession. There's things that you can't control. So, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of times not together, but the times that we tried hardest to make something happen were the times we were least successful. And so what we found is, especially this last year, I was at OU as an analyst, and I left my alma mater. I was asked to leave by the previous staff or whatever. They didn't retain us. And, it was a hard time. And then, was really pushing to have some job opportunity show up, and nothing was happening. And so when we finally just said, hey, you know what, this is out of our hands, man. This is in the Lord's hands. He's going to provide for us. We're in a great situation regardless. We're together. If that's the worst thing that happens to us, then so be it. And, 2 days later, I got a call from Coach Montgomery to come in for an interview at Tulsa. So, and it's happened like that multiple times in my life already. And I'm pretty young in my career, like you said, but really just turning it over to God, man, and just letting him be in control and making the best out of the situation you're in.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so helpful even for what we're going through right now. I think this one of the great things about what's happened is it's crushed the illusion that we were ever in control.
Absolutely.
And thankfully, when the Lord's control, you can move on with peace and trusting, right? Yeah.
That's right.
But I'm going to ask you a question that I like sometimes to ask coaches, and just anybody, but coaches in particular. Who's your hero and why?
My hero is my dad, and just my dad's gone through so many things in his life, and as demons, he's battling just like anybody else. But the way that he's been able to fight through it and just fight through adversity, and show us. He was an unbelievable father to me and my brother. Taught us most of what we know about everything, sports, about work ethic, all those types of things. But he's just incredible at battling through and just being the best person he can be, and he has a great relationship with the Lord, which is great too. And, it has that's never let him down.
Yeah. Let me ask this question, Zach. When's the last time someone asked you who your hero was?
I think it was you. Before that, it was several years ago,
Yeah.
And so I've actually taken that from you, and I asked my guys that. So, 4-H, that's something I carry with me as part of my toolbox now. So I appreciate you for lending that to me. Yeah.
For all you other coaches here, just think about when the last time somebody asked you who your hero was. Great way to get to know somebody. And I remember Zach telling me that about his dad. Well, I got a football question for you here, and I'm going to kind of open it up to some other questions. So this fall, November 28th, you're going to be at the University of Houston, and they're normally one of the better teams in the conference. And it'll be a spot, let's say the spot for the conference championship. Whoever wins the game plays in the conference championship. You're down by 5 with 3 seconds left and no timeouts. You have the ball on the 1 yard line. The offense coordinator at Tulsa looks at you and says, Zach, you make the call. What are you going to call? All right. 1 yard line, 3 seconds left, no timeout. You get to make the call.
I'd probably say, as an offensive line guy, if I say a pass play, I'm going to get just crushed. Some form of gap scheme, whatever that is. We're going to go eating, man. We're going to get after it. So, whether you load up the box and just pound it right at them, or spread them out, I'd say some form of gap scheme, some sort of power counter.
Yeah, good. I knew you were going to say a run.
I better say I'll say QB run game, so Coach Snyder doesn't get pissed off if he ever.
Okay, I got you. That's good. I knew as an O-line guy, you definitely running the ball. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's open it up, coaches on the call here. If you'd like to ask Coach Hanson a question, just unmute your mic there and fire away.
I got a question for you. Coach, this is Ryan Tooley out of Mullen High School in Denver. How do we get more young coaches involved with this game? I noticed that with numbers dwindling, it doesn't help that there's less and less coaches, I think, joining the trade. Is there a way you get former players to come back and help you guys out, or do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think, it's finding the right guys. And one of the things I like to do that I've done in the past is when I see a kid that really has some of the traits that you think would be a really good coach, they're typically the ones that are going to be really successful, like in whatever they do. But just encouraging them and ask them if they've ever thought about coaching as a career, I'm a good example of that. In the back of my head, I always wanted to be a coach, but I never really expressed that to anybody. And I was fortunate. Coach Snyder actually called me in, and I coached my O-line coach, Coach Dickey, that I told you guys about. He had recommended me for his GA spot, and Coach Snyder called me in and talked to me about it. And just said, I think you'd be a great coach. I don't know what your plans are and if that's even something you want to do, but I think you'd be really good. And just from based off of what I did as a player, so I think that's important, man, because a lot of guys will, have their eyes set on something else, or maybe they have that in the back of their mind and for whatever reason they don't bring it out. But so hopefully that answered your question, but that's a good question.
Someone else. So mute your mic and fire away.
Coach, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Nelson, and I'm a specialist coach at Bradley Community High School in Bradley, Illinois. We are blessed this year to have two, what I think are D1 kickers and punters on our team. They're 2021s, and they have been contacted by many schools, and a lot of these schools are asking for their video from the first 2 or 3 games of our season in the fall. Well, here in Illinois, we are faced with the possibility of not having a season at all. What's some good advice that I can give these young men?
I was actually a specialist coach at the University of North Carolina for a couple of years. That's when I was there. So I can tell you obviously as much game tape as they have right now, send all that, make it available to them, to the coaches and things. Other than that, as many workout films and stuff like that you can send, like individual, like your kicker out there kicking field goals. All that stuff will be as valuable as anything, especially if you can't have games, and then, I don't know, maybe trying to reenact having him kick under pressure. If you have guys out there walking with their hands up or doing something like that, just to show that he can kick under pressure, because really that's what they're looking for on the game tape. That's what I looked for as a specialist coach at one point, was what was he like when the lights were on, because it's such a mental game. And then all the other stuff, they'll look at the technique and fundamental part of it with the individual workout, kicking and stuff like that. So that would probably be my best advice for you on that.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
What other questions we have?
Hey, Coach. Hey, Coach.
Hey.
Just a quick one. What's your favorite passage of scripture and why? Is there a meaning behind it?
Yeah, no, I've got a few, and one of the ones for coaching, I actually have a couple of different ones for coaching that I really like, and actually one of my players was one that brought one to my attention. I've been working on building leadership within my own group, and so I've used the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, for like a teaching tool with them, and they've been watching it, and just to see the level that dude played at and how he held his teammates and himself accountable. But one of the scriptures is James chapter 3, verse 1. And it's out of Taming the Tongue is what they're talking about. And the scripture is, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness, for we all stumble in many ways. And so, I think about that from a leadership standpoint of our guys, and that's saying you're going to be held to a higher level. I'm held to a higher accountability when I'm asking my guys to do something. I better not ask them to do something I myself won't do, and it takes a special person to coach and teach, that's for sure. But one of the other ones I liked a lot too was Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. And it says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." I think about that one. I mean, that was one I'd read and read and read, and I still do while I go through this crazy roller coaster. This profession, and how much we can move around and get fired. And like I said, it's just out of our hands. So the big thing there is just continue believing and having faith, but also just not giving up and just trying and shooting for your goals no matter what, and knowing that God is going to bless you, man, and it's going to come.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man.
Another question.
Hey, Coach. Great message. Wondered, what are the basics you try to teach your linemen, whether they be in high school or in college?
From a fundamental technique standpoint, or from in what way?
Yeah. From a fundamental, like what do you try to, 3 things that you try to teach all your linemen that, these are the important things that all linemen need to be aware of?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think one of the most important ones, and it's something, honestly, I don't know if I've ever heard it anywhere, but I'm a big believer in keeping your shoulders square at all times, to the line of scrimmage, whether it's in pass pro or run game. Very rarely am I going to have a guy completely turn his shoulders all the way away from where he's going, and so in pass pro, I tell him to try to stay square as long as possible, and your backside cutting off, you still want to stay square as possible. So that's one. First, second steps is a huge deal for me. Get those first, second steps in the ground, and with a great base and pad level. And I think those are probably the 3 most important things from an offensive line technique and fundamental standpoint, especially when my new guys coming in. That's why I've been stressing to them the whole time. Hey, when you go out and do your drills, try to keep your shoulders square, have a great base and pad level, and use great footwork, first, second steps in the ground. How quick can you get them in?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff. Another question.
Coach Hanson, thank you for your message. Just John Pont from the University of Chicago. You talked about building leadership lessons into your position group at the same time. Practically, how do you work that? Is that a part of your calendar? Is that something that you feel a good lesson and you just feel like it's time to throw it in there? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's something that I'm working on right now. I came in here in February. I had 1 month really with the guys before we got shut down. So, a big deal with me is just trying to build a great culture in this group. And I've developed a couple things that I like to do. The first is like an accountability board is what I call it. And basically everything that our guys do, I'm tracking, and my GA is tracking. So if I ask them to turn a assignment in, a film assignment at midnight on this day, by midnight this day, and that somebody doesn't turn it in, it's going on the board. I text it out to them every single day to the whole group. And so those guys can hold each other accountable, and because ultimately, good teams are led by coaches, great teams are led by players. So turning that around on them and making them hold each other accountable, they're going to have 12 guys that are pretty upset if they don't do something, and so doing whatever we can to hold them accountable. That usually it's the guys letting down their teammates is enough, but just setting a standard for your room too. One of the things I put in my room is I took it from Urban Meyer. Actually, it's above the line and below the line, and the standard line's right here. And so trying to be above the line in everything that we do, from academics to on the field to in your personal life, and holding them to that standard in everything. And then, I try to go through some leadership lessons with the guys in my group. I have 2 guys that I really have identified that are guys of influence that the team has really chosen that they're going to follow. And so trying to reinforce them and teach them as many leadership lessons as possible, whether it's, I just sent them a book for them to read, and it's a leadership book we're all going to read through and talk about how we can become better leaders. And so, reinforcing that, and then just teaching them the valuable things like who are your secondary leaders behind you that can help reinforce what you're trying to give across to your teammates too. So those guys all need to be taught. And then just as an overall group, man, just trying to build that culture by doing things like that. But I'm a huge believer in holding guys accountable. And then the last thing would be setting goals, and setting goals individually too for each of those guys. Because there's a Harvard study that was done where 83% of people don't have any goals, 14% have them but don't write them down, and 3% don't have them and have them written down. And they said that 14% is 10 times more successful than the 83% without goals, and the 3% is 50 times more successful than the ones without goals. So I'm trying to reinforce all those things within your group and hold them accountable for it.
Great. Zach, what's the name of the book that you are having those guys read right now?
It's Relentless by Tim Grover, who's actually Michael Jordan's trainer. He was on the Last Dance. It was a book that my wife and I had gotten and had recommended to us, and it's pretty amazing. He was a trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, kind of a trainer and a mental coach, and just talked about how those guys were able to be so successful and the level they were willing to push to. But there's a lot of good leadership tips and stuff in there too.
Great. Well, guys, our time's up on the call today, but really appreciate all you guys being on the call. Zach, really appreciate you being on the call today. Thanks
Absolutely.
for just being willing to answer these questions, sharing wisdom, and thanks for your humility. And we're all on this journey together, so it helps a lot to hear from someone who's doing it. Want to remind all you guys that this Wednesday at noon, we have another The Heart of the Coach call with Jed Stugart, who's the head coach at Lindenwood University. So encourage you to get on that call, and then we're off on this Friday and next Monday. And then the next Wednesday, we have Turner Gill. Turner's been in a few different places, and he'll be our guest on The Heart of the Coach. But Zach, once again, thanks for being with us today. Please greet Annie for me as well.
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. Thank you guys too. I really appreciate it. It's been nice visiting with you. If I can ever do anything for any of you guys, just holler at me.
You guys have a great day.